What's up, everybody? Rob here. So this is a first-hand account of the Defenestration of Prague as told by Yaroslav Martinez, one of the men who was defenestrated. He was thrown unceremoniously out of a window in Prague, thusly kicking off the 30 Years' War. This is told in the third person. This particular account is told in the third person, so just keep that in mind. It may sound a bit odd that he's referring to himself in such a way, but hey, he felt like doing so there you go. And I also apologize in advance for any mispronunciations. If you are new to my channel, I am terrible at pronouncing foreign names and words. If you're familiar with my channel, this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. Oh, and one other thing too, I apologize also in advance for my New Jersey accent. It's just, it's how I talk, it's the way it is. So, without any further ado, a first-hand account of the Defenestration of Prague. Here we go. And I quote, 23rd of May, a Wednesday, the eve of Ascension Day, 4 Lord Regents came from St. Vitus Cathedral, where the procession had been performed, and they had heard the Holy Mass, and went to the Bohemian Chancellery at 8:30 in the morning. They then quickly and assiduously had all the stools and benches except for a single chair carried out of the Chancellery, so that there would be sufficient room for all the arriving Protestant lords. Around 9 o'clock, lords from all 3 Protestant estates, with a great crowd of their aides and servants, entered the castle of His Imperial Majesty at Prague and the Bohemian Chancellery. Unannounced, quite cheekily, and causing a great deal of importunity, they barged even into the council chamber, where there should have been the greatest security and respect. Thus the Chancellery was entirely filled with lords and knights alone, while most of the burghers stood outside of the front door, which therefore had to remain wide open. The 4 Lord Regents who were present stood together in a windowed corner near the furnace, where there was more room, expecting that the Protestants present would now craft a response to the letter from His Imperial Majesty, a copy which had been communicated to them that Monday. In this letter, they had once again been mildly admonished not to conduct other meetings until His Imperial Majesty's arrival or until they received further decrees. Instead of writing a response, members of these states at once had Lord Paul Riskin read aloud in a clear voice a letter which had the following approximate content. And I quote within the quote, His Imperial Majesty had sent to their graces the Lord Regents a sharp letter that was, by our request, issued to us as a copy after the original had been read aloud, in which His Imperial Majesty declared all of our lives and honor already forfeit, thereby greatly frightening all 3 Protestant estates. As they also absolutely intended to proceed with the execution against us, we came to a unanimous agreement amongst ourselves that, regardless of any loss of life and limb, honor and property, we would stand firm, with all for one and one for all, nor would we be subservient, but rather we would loyally help and protect each other to the utmost against all difficulties. Because, however, it is clear that such a letter came about through the advice of some of our religious enemies, we wish to know, and hereby ask the Lord Regents present, if all or some of them knew of the letter, recommended it, and approved of it. End quote. After this, the Supreme Burgrave answered that since the Lord Regents were only present in the Bohemian Chancellery in a very limited number, and since one of the members, namely Adam von Waldstein, Lord High Steward, was at that moment lying sick in his house in Prague, they wished the lords of all 3 Protestant estates to deliver a copy of the letter that had been read aloud, so that they could notify the High Steward of it and consult with him. They then would not fail to provide the Protestants with an appropriate answer on the following Friday, because Monday was an important holiday. At this, many, including Lord Heinrich Matthias, Count von Thurn, Lord Leonard Colon von Fels, and Wilhelm Popel von Lobkowitz, the elder, said to the regents, one after another, and I quote, No, we want to have a clear answer now from the 4 of your graces who are now present, end quote. At this, the 4 regents came together to the window in the corner and answered that they would be bound and obliged by a serious oath, and that they were thus certainly not entitled to reveal anything that had occurred in the council, nor reveal what they had advised or not advised to have been done. The Protestant lords, however, refused to be satisfied with this, especially Count von Thurn, who stated, and I quote, This is a very serious question, and you, and especially the Lord Supreme Burgrave and Lord Grand Prior, can answer it. Until you do, we will not leave the Bohemian Chancellery. For once, we wish to know and receive a clear answer. End quote. Suddenly, Lord Hans Litvin von Rixen uncovered his pistols he had hidden on his belt under his coat, grasped hold of them, and fired them in a very threatening manner. He then went right up to Lord von Martinez, defiantly kicked him down, and straddled him. After a brief discussion, the Supreme Burgrave said, and I quote, "Because you will have nothing less and practically forced us, we wish, before God Almighty, to protest most strenuously before you and the entire world, publicly and expressly, and we take all of you lords present as our witnesses, that we were forced to give this answer, and we can say with good conscience that we did not advise anything that was contrary to the letter of majesty." End quote. At which they, especially Counts von Thurn and von Fels, Wilhelm Popel the Elder, Brusilav Berka, Wenzel Wilhelm von Rupa, Joachim Andreas Schlick, Hans Litwin von Rizkan, Albrecht Hans Smirsky, and Lord Ulrich Kinsky discussed this intensely and then loudly and chaotically cried out, and I quote, "It is clear to us the imperial letter goes against our letter of majesty. Furthermore," they said, "Lord Supreme Burgrave and Lord Grand Prior, we know well that both of you are pious and would not advise such a thing, nor wish to harm us, but must have been persuaded and led astray by Lords Slata and Martinez." End quote. After this, they turned to these two lords, that is, to William Slawata and Martinez, and said, quote, "You are enemies of us and our religion, and have desired to deprive us of our letter of majesty, and have horribly plagued your Protestant subjects, and have tried to force them to adopt religion against their wills, or have them expelled for this reason." End quote. Then the above-mentioned 9 people were thrown into confusion, and all the others who were present, but Lord Count von Thurn and Lord William Popel in particular strongly challenged the Lords Slata and Martinez with these words, and I quote again, "See, all dear lords, these men are great enemies of us and our religion. Know for certain that all you lords, that so long as they remain in our country, our letter of majesty will never be safe, nor will indeed the lives of any of us and our dear wives and children. And were we to keep these men alive, then we would lose the letter of majesty and our religion, and all of us would then be stripped and deprived of our lives, honor, and property, for there can be no justice gained from or by them." End quote. Then Lord William Popel and several others turned to the two regents and said, quote, "Lord Supreme Burgrave and Lord Grand Prior, please leave now. Nothing bad will happen to both of you by our hands, but with these other two we shall have justice." End quote. Then several of them dragged the Supreme Burgrave and the great Lord Prior by their hands out the door of the Bohemian Chancellery and led them away. Immediately after this, the lords furiously and violently laid hands on the two oft-mentioned regents. I think Count von Thurn and Joachim Andreas, Count von Schlick, along with several others, forcibly seized Lord Slata, while Lord William Popel, Hans Litwin von Rizkan, Lord Ulrich Kinsky, Lord Albrecht Smirsky, and Lord Paulus Kepler seized Lord von Martinez. They strongly pulled them here and there through the entire Bohemian Chancellery, starting from the fireplace and ending at the window on the opposite side, crying, and I quote, "Now we will show justice to those who are enemies of our religion." End quote. At this time, Lord Martinez said aloud, quote, "Since this concerns the will of God, the Catholic religion, and the will of the Emperor, we shall suffer everything gladly and patiently." End quote. They both seriously thought that they would be led to the door and then held in arrest for some time, but once they had passed by the door and had seen the window opened immediately before them, they both ceaselessly began to ask for the benefit of a confessor for whom they wished to confess at once, and ask most fervently for the final righteousness of God. At this, however, the Protestant members of these states, without concerning this ardent request, answered, and I quote, Yes, we will soon usher in the mischievous Jesuits as well." End quote. With this, the aforementioned people grasped unto Lord von Martinez, who faithfully commended himself to Lord God Almighty with these words, quote, "Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me. Mother of God, remember me." End quote. And those who wore only a black canvas coat along with a rapier and dagger, but not a hat, for this, which had a beautiful braid decorated with gold and precious stones, had been ripped from his hand. Then, bareheaded, he was miserably shoved and thrown headfirst out of the window and into the castle moat, which perhaps 30 cubits down and rocky. As he, however, strongly and continuously cried out in turn the holy names Jesus and Mary, this terrifying toss and fall did not deprive him of life. It saw him only slightly injured due to the mysterious grace and compassion of God, achieved through the intercession of our dear and most distinguished Lady. It was then commonly said and staunchly avowed as certain many pious, God-fearing people who claim to have clearly seen this for themselves, that in the air above Lord von Martinitz, who was the first to fall, appeared the most holy and praiseworthy Virgin Mary, the Mother of God and his sublime patron, and, so to speak, slowed him in his fall with her outstretched coat placed beneath him, such that he might fall to the earth much more softly. Thus she mercifully helped to maintain in life and health and keep him from certain death. Although Lord von Martinitz had not seen this so clearly, nonetheless it happened. He could clearly remember that while he called out both names during his fall, because he had, without despairing, held out strong hopes of finally and at any moment gaining his long hoped for martyr's crown. It truly appeared to him as though the highest heavens opened up to him, and that he should soon enter there into eternal glory. Next came Lord Zlata, who was also devoutly calling out to God the Lord, saying, "God have mercy on me, a sinner." They first badly smashed the fingers of his right hand, which he then tried to hold on until they were bloody, and then threw him through the same window, without his hat and in a black velvet coat, with his rapier, and he quickly fell to the earth. He rolled 8 cubits further and deeper into the moat than had Lord Martinitz, and badly entangled his head in his heavy coat. Finally came the third, Lord Philippus Fabricius, imperial counselor and secretary to the kingdom of Bohemia. He was chosen mostly because of the demands of Lord Albrecht Hansen Smirzicki, by whom he had also previously been plagued in his writings in all kinds of ways. He had also brought by them in his coat without his hat to the window, where he assiduously cried out to God, "God have mercy on my soul," and was thrown into the moat. And that ends the account of the Defenestration of Prague. All 3 men did survive the fall. The Catholics say it was the intercession of God, the Virgin Mary, and holy angels. Others, the Protestants particularly, believe that this was due to them landing in a dung heap. It depends on who you talk to, and in any event, all 3 men did survive, though, and they were able to report back what happened to them. And the news of this particular event kicked off the Bohemian Revolt, which would eventually lead to the 30 Years' War. So, that is it for this video. Just something really short and simple. I figured you would enjoy it, find it a little interesting. In any event, please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos coming out whenever I get around to it. And have a good day. Or don't have a good day. Your adults have any kind of day you want. See you later.